Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 67.
Congratulations, you showed up. Give yourself a high five in celebration of your success. Welcome to the Cashflow Diary, where new and experienced investors come to take confident action towards their goals. Your host is a family man, a real estate entrepreneur, investor, coach, and instructor. As a master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's Cashflow 101 game, he's inspired many to begin their journey into creating cash flow for themselves and their family. And now, here he is to offer you the tools required to earn the income desired. Your cash flow coach, Jay Massey.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. My name is Jay. If this is your first time, I am so glad you're here. If this is your 56th or 7th or 100th time, I'm glad you're here too, because it means that you're enjoying what it is that we're bringing to you. Today, we've got a special guest, as I'm sure you probably already figured out from the title. And one of the things that I'm often asked all the time, I am often asked, how do you build a team? How do you work through and with difficult situations? And, one of the key things that I've learned, the difference is between, say, a stock person or a gold person or someone who chooses to use real assets like real estate in investing is just their ability to communicate interpersonally, not with yourself, but also outside of yourself. That communication skill, in my opinion, is the number one thing that sets most successful real estate investors apart. And I want to bring to you an individual who I believe is going to be able to give us some very good insights into becoming master communicators in that way so that you and I can continue to go out there and build cash flow. However, if this is your first time joining us, feel free to go over to learninvestingnow.com. Obviously, we have a free course sitting there waiting for you. It'll help you begin your real estate career to either buying and selling property and or raising capital and or learning to just transact real estate using none of your own money or credit. However, if you say to yourself, you know what, Jay, I am so tired of learning, I'm ready to start doing, great. You're going to go over to Begin Investing Now. And you guys know that we have cash flow ready properties sitting there just waiting for you. And one of our cash flow consultants will be there to assist you. Plus, you get the free video on how to buy and hold property 5 different ways using none of your own money or credit. Enough of that. Let's talk about today's guest. Now, before I do so, though, let me ask you, can you really systematically get the results you want from others while making them feel genuinely, keyword there, good about themselves, about the process, and about you? Now, our guest says absolutely. See, Bob Burg is a sought-after speaker at corporate conferences and for entrepreneurial events. He regularly addresses audiences ranging in size from 50 to 16,000. Sharing the platform with notables including today's top thought leaders, broadcast personalities, Olympic athletes, and political leaders, including a former U.S. president. Now, for years, he was best known for his book, Endless Referrals. And over the past few years, it's been his business parable, The Go-Giver, which was also co-authored by John David Mann, that has captured the heart and imagination of his readers. And remember, now, today's guest has had a book that is shot to number 6 on the Wall Street Journal's business bestseller list in just 3 weeks, and then it really reached number 9 on Business Week's. It's been translated into 21 languages, and it's his 4th book to sell over 250,000 copies. That means today's guest has a lot of information to share with you and I in such a way that you and I can use it. In fact, millions of people across this planet have been able to use it to achieve their levels of success. Now, the cool thing is he's got a new book. And he believes his new book, Adversary into Allies, Win People Over Without Manipulation or Coercion, is by far his most important work yet. I'm excited that he's here. So hopefully you'll join me in welcoming and listening to Mr. Bob Burg. Bob, you there?
I am, Jay. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
I am just overjoyed that you are able to make the time in your schedule in between talking, with presidents and thousands of people to share with us, how we can do exactly what your book title says, turn our adversaries into allies and win people over without manipulation or coercion. One of the questions I often get, because to be successful in building your cash flow, be that, in business, be that whatever, method or mechanism you want to use, one of the questions that I often get is, how do I build a team, and how do you deal with difficult people and all these other things? But what I really would love to know from you is, when it comes to interpersonal skills, and you having had exposure to so many different people across this planet, how necessary is our ability to communicate and effectively share with people, our vision in such a way that they don't feel manipulated or coerced?
Well, I think it's so important. And as you mentioned earlier, it's a huge difference in those investors who are successful. Because, I think there's many people now who would agree with this, that about 10% of success in business is technical skills. Probably 90% is people skills. I'm a big believer, Jay, that you can have practically all the success, the important success skills working for you. Think about it. You can be very talented and of extremely high character. You can be ambitious, kind, charitable, hardworking, thrifty, and energetic. You can have a knack for numbers and a head for business. You can be even-tempered. You can be creative. However, unless you're able to influence others, really get the results you want from others, the desired and appropriate results, your chances for attaining significant success are somewhat limited. Now, on the other hand, when combining benevolent intent and a learned skill set, you can find yourself constantly, consistently, really predictably attaining satisfaction, both business-wise and personally, while adding exceptional value to everyone whose lives you touch. And of course, in a free market-based economy, that's really what it's all about. It's tapping into what the other person wants and connecting your desires with their desires. And so really, that's what it's about. I call this ultimate influence, the ability to get the results you want from others while helping them feel genuinely good about themselves, about the situation, and about you.
Okay. Now, you used a word that we hear a lot. At least I hear it a lot. I mean, we all hear that somehow influencing others is important. And I tend to agree that it's important, but I really want to know from your perspective, what is influence? How can I gain it? And why on earth is it important in the first place?
Well, those are all great questions. Influence on a very, very basic level can be defined simply as the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. On a bit deeper level, we could say it's an unseen flow of power. And while both definitions work, I don't think either one really captures its essence. When it comes right down to it, influence is pull. It's an attraction. You don't hear people say, wow, that Jay, he is so influential. He has a lot of push with right? It's not a matter of pushing your will onto others or pushing your desires onto others. It's pull. Influence is pull. It's an attraction. Great influencers, they're really, you think about this, great influencers attract people to themselves and to their ideas. And again, they do this not through push, but through its opposite, pull. Now, this pull we're discussing is really a very legitimate form of power. Power being the opposite of force. See, force is control. It's manipulation, intimidation, compliance. It's typically a function of positional authority. And in leadership teaching, it's actually called positional leadership. The person has a title, department head, supervisor, manager, maybe even employer. And hey, let's face it, Jay, even someone with only positional authority can still compel certain people to do certain things. Mm-hmm. The employee knows if they want any chance for advancement, promotion, or raise, or to not be punished or disciplined or fired, or, if the person who is your supplier, you can coerce them or force them to do something, or they're going to lose your business. The challenge with utilizing compliance in order to influence is that typically, and this is whether you're leading a team of 1,000 or 10 or a family member or a committee of 3 or the difficult customer service representative or the supplier you need something from, the biggest challenge with trying to influence through compliance is simply that at best, people will do exactly what they're told and not one bit more. At worst, they'll find a way to sabotage the process completely, either consciously or unconsciously. But again, that's compliance. The opposite of compliance is commitment. Now, when you have commitment from others, that's a whole different story. And this commitment, Jay, is practically always the result of the influencer not just understanding, but embracing what I believe was the most important point in Dale Carnegie's awesome classic How to Win Friends and Influence People, which was filled with awesome points.
Yeah.
And that is this. What Carnegie wrote was, ultimately, people do things for their reasons, not our reasons. And so the great influencer can constantly questions themselves. How they ask themselves, how does what I'm asking this person to do align with their goals, their wants, their needs, their desires? How does what I want this other human being to do align with their values? And to the degree that we ask ourselves these questions thoughtfully, intelligently, and authentically, not as a way to manipulate another person into doing our will, but as a way to build everyone in the process, that's the degree that we have come closer and closer to earning that commitment from those other people or from that person. And when it comes to influence, I love what my great friend, one of my mentors, Dondi Scumaci, says about this. Dondi says, compliance will never take you where commitment can go. And I think that's so profound, because the great influencer understands that they only accomplish great things through working with others. And that when it comes right down to it, it's not about them. Great leadership is never about the leader. Great influence is never about the influencer. And great salesmanship is never about the salesperson. It's always about the other person.
Nice. And okay, so you just totally dropped a whole bunch right there, because what it comes down to is, I mean, if I'm a new investor, I've got to deal with, I'm dealing with so many different things. If I'm trying to build or expand my cash flow, maybe I've grown my portfolio to a certain size, and that's as far as I can go, quote unquote, on my own. We often say that wealth is a team sport. And once that happens, is that now what you've got to do is you've got to put yourself in a position to be able to influence others, to enroll them in the vision. And I love what you said, that you've got to earn commitment, and you've got to become this person. So what I hear you saying, though, really is, I may not be a good influencer today, but that doesn't mean I can't become one. So what would you say what are the steps to making that shift or that change, so that I can learn how to become this influencer, this leader that can actually unlock the potential of my dreams and vision?
Well, in the book Adversaries into Allies, we break it down into 5 principles of what we call ultimate influence. And I do this because in every interpersonal transaction, whether it's a potentially positive or negative one, typically all 5, at least one, often more, and sometimes all 5 of these principles will come into play. The good news is they're very, very intuitive, and that's why after the first chapter, where I explain those 5 principles, the rest of the book is simply very short stories. They can be anywhere from a half a page to maybe 3 pages at the most, where I put people into these situations that they've either been in before, are in now, or will be at some time in the future, and simply based on ultimate influence, on the principles involved, show them how to very easily turn the situation around so that it works for everyone involved. And it is absolutely a skill that can be learned.
That's awesome. So now the five principles, at least as I understand them, they're controlling your emotions, understanding the clash of belief systems, acknowledging their ego, set the proper frame, and communicating with tact and empathy.
Yes.
Of those five, which is the most important?
Well, it's a great question, and I'm not sure there's anyone that's most important because sort of like a car that you flatten one of the tires, it really can't run. I mean, all tires are important. I'm not really sure that any of the five principles is more important, only because if you take even one of them away, you're probably not going to have the kind of level of success you can have if you use all five, or if you're familiar with all five.
I see. Okay, then let me reframe. What would you say is the most challenging one to master?
Well, for different people, it's different things. I know for me, it was the first one, and that's control your own emotions. I begin the book with a saying from the sages of old, which was, "Who is a mighty person?" And their answer was that person who can control their own emotions and make of an enemy or of a potential enemy a friend. That's really a mighty person. And it all begins with controlling your emotions because, Jay, only when you are in control of your emotions, when you're in charge of your emotions, when you're the boss of yourself, only then are you in a position to be able to take a potentially negative situation or person and be able to turn it around so that everyone comes out a winner. As human beings, we are emotional creatures. We would like to think that we're logical. And to a certain extent, certainly we are, but really, as human beings, we make major decisions based on emotion. We back up those emotional decisions with logic, or we rationalize. And if you take the word rationalize and break it in half, it simply means we tell ourselves rational lies. And we do that in order to justify our emotion-based decisions. We always have to be careful about that. The key here, though, is when it comes to emotions and controlling our emotions, is that in our everyday interactions with people, that other person can either intentionally or more than likely unintentionally say or do things that push our buttons. And when that happens and we allow ourselves to become upset, mad, angry, sad, helpless feeling, what have you, then we're not operating out of strength. We're operating out of weakness. So that person who loses control and begins to yell and scream and so forth, they're not in a power position. They're in a very weak position because they are under the other person or the situation's control. Now, so it's very important that we master that aspect, and I provide steps how to do that. But the key is this. It's not that I'm saying, this is very important. It's not that I'm saying that you should not be an emotional person. We're human beings, and emotions are part of what makes life fun and joyful and so forth and so on. That's wonderful. But again, referring to my great friend Dondi Scumaci, as she says, by all means, take your emotions along for the ride, but make sure you are driving the car. In other words, while it's great to have emotions, we need to be in control of those emotions as opposed to those emotions controlling us.
Love it. Absolutely. And I really like the point about, we don't have to be Vulcan in order to make this thing work, because if it's anything I'm not is Vulcan. I've got lots of emotions. Now, there are two overriding emotions that as at least as investors or as we're out there building cash flow, that I believe many of us are dealing with. Typically, when we're buying something, we're dealing with, the emotion of fear. And when we're selling, an asset or selling something, we're dealing with the emotion of greed. Now, I guess my question to you is, I guess it's going to be a two-part question. So part, let's say I'm looking to buy a property. I'm looking to buy an asset. I'm looking to buy a business. And for whatever reason, the seller has a price on it that is significantly higher than what I think I should pay, yet I want to do business. I want that one. How do I turn this potential conflict how do I turn this potential conflict and adversary into my friend and ally? How would you handle that?
Well, one key, Jay, is to obviously not insult that other person. Not try to cajole them. They may be scared of you, but they're probably not going to do business with you. And so, that doesn't end up working well. So what you want to do is you want to speak to this person with tact and empathy, which is principle number 5. When you think of it, my dad has always defined tact as the language of strength. Tact is really, in one of my favorite books by Les Giblin, written probably 70 years ago, he wrote, "What counts is attaining personal satisfaction without trampling upon the egos of those we deal with." So we see that, tact has to do with understanding and empathizing, understanding that person has emotions, which is a part of the ego. Those are very closely related. So obviously we need to make this person feel good about themselves and good about us. As we know, people are going to probably do business with you more likely and even come down on that price and some other considerations if they like you. Again, it's emotional, and that's just what it is. And whether it should be or not doesn't matter. Successful people deal with the world according to how the world is, not how they wish it were. Which doesn't mean we don't try to improve things. Of course, we try to, and we often can. But we also understand that there are certain principles of this earth, of this world, and of people, and people do things for certain reasons. So the first thing you might just say to this person is just, you thank them. Thank you so much. While I love the idea of purchasing this home from you, I'm afraid I can't justify purchasing it at this price. Now, what you've done is you've given an I message. This is very, very important, and it's very powerful. Rather than saying, you're asking for too much, or, you're charging a price too high, what you're saying is, an I message here, I love the idea of us, I've really enjoyed meeting you. I love the idea of purchasing this home from you, but I'm afraid I simply can't justify doing so at this price. So you're letting them know it's not personal. It has nothing to do with them. You like them. You'd love to buy this home from them, but at this point, I can't justify. So it keeps it very, very impersonal. Now, if this person now has the choice of responding to you, so they're going to need to defend their high price rather than you trying to defend why it should be lower. And so if they can, they'll probably say, if they are movable on price, they'll probably say, well, what are you looking to, pay, or what would be, the price you would be willing to, so and so. And now you take it from there. But what's happened is the negotiation is now a matter of collaboration and one of allies rather than one between adversaries.
Now, many people would say that's like a sales conversation, but it just sounds like, what you're really doing is you're actually considering, their needs better than your own to a degree inside of your communication, and just letting them know, where you're really coming from. You're being very clear. I like it. And you're being very specific. And I love the use of the I versus the you. Now, I guess the question becomes, what if the shoe's on the other foot? Now I'm the seller, and I'm looking at this buyer, and what I really would like this buyer to do is to pay more than or come up on their price a little bit. How do I, again, is the communication the same, or is it going to be a little bit different now that I'm dealing with the fact that I want to be able to get the property sold, or get my asset sold, or the business sold, or get this new customer or client, but how do I help them understand the value that I'm actually presenting versus you just got to pay more and making them mad and walking away?
Well, there are two aspects of that, and you touched on a very important point, and one is their understanding the value of it. Remember, price is a dollar figure. It's a dollar amount. Value is the relative worth or desirability of a thing to the end user or beholder, which is what the prospect is. So what is it about this thing, in this case, this house, that brings with it so much worth that this person would, or value that this person would pay that price. So that's a matter of, in any sales conversation, and by the way, this is a sales conversation. But how we define sales and selling is very, very important, because on its most basic level, selling is simply finding out what the other person wants or needs and helping them to get it. One of my old mentors, Harry Brown, used to say that profit in a free market, profit is simply the reward for satisfying another person's desire. Okay, so this person, first of all, has to see that the value is a certain amount for them to pay this. Now, let's say they would, okay? Let's say they do value it to the price that you're wanting to charge. But because they've taken a negotiation class or something, they go at it, a little lower than what they think, hoping that they can have you come down in price. If that's not something you plan to do, then you have that same conversation as we talked about earlier, only from the other side of the pay table. It might be, thank you so much. I've so enjoyed working with you. And while I love the idea of you purchasing this home, I'm afraid I can't justify selling it at that price.
Well, I hope that right now you are very excited that you chose to listen to this particular episode, because you are getting some of the best information that is currently available on, yes, turning your adversaries into allies. But more importantly, I think you can hear how useful what we're talking about actually is. And that's good. So I won't keep you from it too long. I just wanted to make sure that you understood where we were going with all this. Anyway, for those of you wondering, yep, it's that time. I just want to make sure that all of you know how to get the book. Right. My book is here in and of itself. We'll be getting back to the cash flow question in the not too distant future. But if for those of you who still want to grab a copy, you can go over to cashflowdiary.com/book. Cashflowdiary.com/book. Now, if you are not near a computer at the moment, but you have a iPhone or some other mobile device handy, take it out. Send a text message with the keyword book to 949-682-3565. 949-682-3565. One more thing I just want to let you guys know. Now, many of you have participated already, but maybe some of you haven't. On Tuesdays, we tend to broadcast live where I'm answering your questions about real estate. Go over to cashflowdiary.tv. Check it out. You probably see a recording that's sitting there for you right now. And you can let us know if you'd like to know when we're doing other live events that are being broadcast as well. And we will gladly let you know when that is. Let's get back to the interview. There was one thing that you said earlier that is still sticking in my head. You said that by being able to apply the principles, you said there were 3 very specific things that we would be able to do. We would be able to be consistent, we would be able to be constant, and then predictable. I'm like, whoa, hold on. If I'm supposedly, like you say, in this free market world and I'm making this transition, how on earth can my income ever be predictable? Because to me, I think that's one of the things that keeps most people from really going for those things that they want, is that they have the perceived idea that how they're currently living is actually predictable and safe, when oftentimes taking that bigger risk could be the more predictable and safe thing to do. And I'm curious to hear your perspective on how that's attainable with these principles.
Well, the predictability is in utilizing these, is in your people skills. The predictability is that you're going to get the results you want when dealing with others. It doesn't mean every time, but it does mean most of the time. And it's absolutely powerful that when you utilize these principles that I've shared in the book, your business, your personal life too, but in this case, we're talking within the business context, your business will be a lot more fun, a lot less stressful, and a lot more profitable. Now, when you talk about the predictability of the business in terms of investing, of course, that's not my area, but that is your area. And I know some of your story and what you and your wife had to overcome in order to build the kind of business you've built. And what you're really doing is you're providing your students with a system for doing so. Now, what is a system? Well, I define a system as the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles. In other words, the key is predictability. If by doing A, you'll get the desired result of B, then you know that all you need to do is follow A and do A constantly and consistently enough, and you'll eventually realize the result of B. Michael Gerber, in his excellent E-Myth series, says that systems permit ordinary people to achieve extraordinary results predictably. Now, we can also take what Dr. Gerber said and reverse that too, because any universal law or principle works forwards and backwards. And we could say without a system, even extraordinary people find it difficult to predictably achieve even ordinary results. So, I presented a system in this book for dealing with others successfully, for people skills, for that, what I believe is the 90% of what it takes to be successful. However, that's not going to make them successful in and of itself in terms of real estate investing. That's something they need you to help them do.
And indeed, totally understood. The one thing that I am liking though is you said it very quickly, but I don't want that point to be missed. And although we're talking primarily in the business arena, that doesn't restrict the use of your information in the business arena. I often tell people becoming a better business owner helps me be a better father and a better husband and a better friend and all these other things. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Oh, absolutely. This is, the publisher portfolio is a business publisher, so it's in the business book section, but it's across the board. I mean, these are life principles, and business is simply part of life. It's really difficult, if not impossible, to be one way at work or in business and another way at home. You can't be honest in one place and dishonest in another. It's just too hard to do. So really, these principles are absolutely across the board.
Yep, agreed. Now, wouldn't you say though that, because earlier you said influence is your definition was to move a person to a desired action. Now, yes, we can push a person or we can pull a person, but wouldn't you say that whether we're pushing or pulling, isn't that kind of the definition of being manipulative?
No, although it sounds like it could be, and that's why I definitely talk about that in the book, because it's very, very important to make that point. So I'm glad you brought that up. When you talk about influence, there are really two ways you could do it, two basic ways. One is through manipulating another person, which includes pushing, or through what I call persuasion, where persuasion is positive, manipulation is negative. But I tell people, make no mistake about it, two, manipulation and persuasion are definitely cousins. One's the good cousin, persuasion, and one's the evil cousin, manipulation. But it's very important to understand the difference, because both manipulators and persuaders understand people, and they understand what moves people. And so it begins with intent, but it doesn't end there. Probably the best explanation of the difference between manipulation and persuasion was from a book I read that was written back in 1987 by Dr. Paul W. Sweats. It was entitled "The Art of Talking So That People Will Listen," though it was really much more about listening than it was about talking. But it was a brilliant book, and in it, he explained it like this: manipulation does not consider the good of the other party. It tends to result in a win-lose situation. It does not take the other party into consideration. In direct contrast to the manipulator, the persuader seeks to enhance the self-esteem of the other party. The result is that people respond better because they're treated as responsible, we might say response-able, self-directing individuals. So it begins with intent, Jay, but you know what? It doesn't end there, because while both a manipulator and a persuader can cause a person or elicit a person to take an immediate action. Once you know you've been manipulated, you will do anything you can to resist this person. You will not trust this person. You will avoid this person. Even if you have to deal with this person, you'll be very, very careful so as not to be manipulated again. However, once you've been persuaded, it worked out very, very well for you. You felt great about the whole thing, and you're much more likely to want to buy into this person in the future. So while both can have immediate results, the persuader has longer lasting results as well. See, the manipulator is very I focused or me focused. They may not be trying to hurt the other party, but they don't necessarily care if they do, as long as they get what they want. It's all about them. It's win at all costs. With the persuader, that would never happen. For a persuader to win, they need to know that the other person also won and came out ahead.
Nice. Now, let's play a quick little game, and you can say persuader or manipulator. Those are the answers. I'm going to name some characters because as I'm listening to you, there are some characters that are coming to my head that I think many of our audience would know, and that to give them a clearer definition of how you're defining persuader and manipulator, that way they can see whom they might want to emulate. So, are you willing to play a little game with me?
Yeah, but I might be hesitant to just say persuader or manipulator. It may be, there may be some not necessarily gray area as much as reasons why it would seem to be one, but maybe not necessarily. So with that disclaimer in mind, absolutely.
Okay, cool. This is going to be good. So here's the first character I'm thinking of. So think of the Star Wars movies, and then I'm just going to go with Luke Skywalker, persuader or manipulator.
He'd be a persuader, but when we talk about force, force versus power, and we say the force was actually more what we would call power, because the force was actually very benevolent.
Got it. Now let's go to the other side, the dark side, and talk about Darth Vader.
He would be force. He would be manipulator.
Got it. Excellent. Now we go Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Persuader.
Oh, see, and those are the things that these things are coming to me as well as I'm sitting here thinking about. Okay, so let me see another character that I keep thinking about is maybe I have small kids, so 101 Dalmatians. There's the Cruella de Vil. Yeah.
From what I remember back about 50 years ago, she would be the evil manipulator.
Yep. And I'm just trying to give people some ideas so that they can tangibly figure some other characters. So, who else would you consider to be that, alive, dead, what have you, that you would consider to be a persuader?
Ben Franklin was a wonderful example of a great persuader. His book, Ben Franklin, the Autobiography, was a wonderful book that taught a lot of wisdom. I'm a Franklin person, so I read anything I can get my hands on regarding Franklin. But I probably loved his autobiography more than anything else because it was coming from his own head. And so I would absolutely look at him as one of the heroes. And I actually mentioned him in the book and a couple of the stories.
Nice. And who would be the quintessential manipulator if you had to name a person?
Oh, boy. That's one of those things where, like both, there are, on both ends of the spectrum, there are so many that it's difficult to, it's difficult to almost come up with one name.
Yeah, I'm betting a number of people listening are going, yeah, they probably have an idea. Names are coming up to their minds over and over and over again. The point being, there's one we wish to avoid and one we wish to be more like. And from what I'm gathering, the major points inside of, your book will help all of us become more persuaders than manipulators, regardless of what it is that we're looking for, whether it's getting out of a traffic ticket or trying to push it and, towards our dreams and rally people behind a cause, whether that be a benevolent cause, a nonprofit, or even a for-profit individual. The point is learning to control and master influence. It seems like that's key in order to make business happen these days. I'm assuming you agree very strongly with that.
Well, sure, because if no one is moved to action, nothing happens. And again, it's always a matter of looking at selling as being of benefit to the customer. And again, in a free market, they're only going to do business with you because they find there being value in doing business with you, and that's good. That's the way it should be. Which means that as the seller, whether we're buying or selling, we're the seller in this case. As an investor, because we're looking to accomplish something that we want. And help the other person while we're doing it, so both parties come out ahead. And it's understanding that in selling that you're focused on providing value to that person, because they're only going to make that exchange or do business with you because they feel you're bringing value to their life. That's the only reason why they're going to do business with you. This is why we say that money is simply an echo of value. It's the thunder to value's lightning, which means the value must come first, and the money you receive is simply a very natural and direct result of the value that you provided and communicated to another person.
Nice. Now, you had said something earlier, and I meant to stop you then, and it's come, and you brought it right back to my head again. You said that the successful deal with how the world is, not how we wish it were. I'd love for you to elaborate a little bit on that. What did you really mean? What is it that I need to do? What is it that we can do today to make sure that we are dealing with the situation the way it is, not the way we wish it were?
Sure. Well, it's like gravity, okay? We know that in terms of our earthly existence, we'll get past looking at everything is just an illusion. And let's say, as far as we know and how we operate in our earthly plane, certain things there are certain laws of nature, okay? One of them being gravity. And so it doesn't matter that you or I might think, oh, it is so unfair that there's gravity, okay? What we're going to do is we're not going to purposely walk off a 7-story building, because we know that even though we might even belong to a group of people that were the NBG group, non-believers in gravity group. And strongly as we feel about the unfairness of gravity, we know it simply exists, whether we want it to or not, okay? And so we're going to operate in that way. It's operating within the laws of nature rather than without the law, outside the laws of nature. So we go back to, if I may, my one of my old mentors, Harry Brown, okay? And Harry made a great point. And I blogged about this at the Burg.com blog. I did a series on this because it was so brilliant. Harry talks about that people, all people seek happiness, okay? And we might want to argue with this, but it's one of the few things, and I very rarely say everyone or no one, because usually it's not true, but everyone seeks happiness. If we define happiness as a mental feeling of well-being, everyone seeks happiness. So everything someone does is in order to bring them happiness. Now, we have to understand law number 2, though, with that, because the first one is everyone seeks happiness. Law number 2 is happiness is relative. In other words, different people understand happiness differently. What would make you happy might not make me happy. What would make me happy might not make you happy. We all see different things as bringing different degrees of happiness. Some things that make one person happy would make another person miserable. So the first 2 laws are that people act out of what they believe will bring them happiness. Now, not every act brings happiness because individuals make mistakes, but every act is aimed at bringing happiness. Law number 2 is that happiness is relative. Okay, so in other words, people see happiness differently. Number three is um, that resources are limited, which isn't to say we don't live in an abundant world. We do, but resources are still limited. Everyone only has a certain amount of years to live, hours in the day. They have a certain amount of knowledge, a certain amount of money, so what that means is they must make choices. So we go through this, okay? We understand that people make decisions based on what they believe has the best chance of bringing them happiness, based on how they value that particular thing in terms of their happiness, and based on limited choices. That is human nature. And the person who works within human nature will be successful, because what they'll do is they'll understand that in order to get the results they want, they must bring value to that other person. What Harry claims is the ultimate mistake is thinking that someone will willingly will make a decision contrary to what they believe will bring them happiness. Does that make sense?
Yes, and in fact, I like it because it brings some clarity and hopefully bring some clarity to possibly some difficult relationships or situations or conversations, because it can feel like someone is quote unquote against us, but what you're really saying is that they're acting in what they believe to be their own quote unquote best interest, or what it is that they're after. It's just not, they're defining happiness differently.
Yeah. And let me explain one thing, because there's a question that some people listening might have right now, and that is, well, Bob, what about the person who gives $1,000 to charity instead of keeping the money? That's not in their own interest, because remember, Dale Carnegie said people do what they want to do, right? They do what's of interest of what in their own self. They operate out of their own self-interest. Well, but giving $1,000 to charity isn't in their own self-interest. They're thinking more of the charity. You know what? Well, they are thinking of the charity, but what they're doing is what they are happier donating $1,000 to the Animal Rescue Association than they would be keeping that $1,000. Remember, they'll make choices based on what they believe will make them most happy, based on how they define happiness, based on the limited amount of choices they have. They probably like to keep the $1,000 and give the $1,000, but they can't do that because resources are limited. We make choices based on what we believe has the best chance of bringing us happiness. And so what happens is that person who gave that $1,000 to the animal rescue place, they did what was congruent with their values. They did what they wanted to do based on what they felt would make them happy.
Exactly. And that's the very thing that I think is key to understanding influence, is when you being clear about that. But what's also, I think you've said that I want to make sure people understand, because what I hear you saying is, most of the time I think people shy away, or we shy away from becoming a person of influence, because we don't want to feel like we quote unquote made somebody do something. But what I hear you say is that people look for a reason to do the right things, and part of our job as the ultimate influencer, if you will, is to help them understand that we are that person through whom which they can exercise or see or manifest what it is that they're looking for. That's kind of what I'm hearing you say.
Oh, absolutely. Remember, as an influencer, as a salesperson, you've got to bring other people value in order for them to make that decision. Now, again, that's in a free market-based situation where they're not forced to do something, and which is great. That's the way we want it to be. So, sure, if you've influenced this person in a free market type of situation, then it's only because you were able to bring them the type of value they wanted that would make them happy, based on how they define happiness and within the limited choices they have.
Absolutely. So as we end, I got a couple of questions. One, we've had a great conversation today, and I know that many are wanting to take this conversation deeper with you, and they would love to figure out some of those very specific steps that they can take to control their emotions. And we didn't even get a chance to uncover and unpack all the information that you have under, understanding the clash of belief systems or acknowledging their ego and setting the proper frame. So what would be the best way for, me or anyone to go take that next step and find out more either about what you have and what you're doing so that we can become those bigger, better influencers?
Sure. Well, I would invite anyone to visit my website, which is burg.com, and that's BURG.com. On the far right-hand side, they can click on the graphic of the book, Adversaries into Allies, and get Chapter 1, where it actually goes through all 5 principles of ultimate influence. Control your own emotions, understand the clash of belief systems, acknowledge their ego, set the proper frame, and communicate with tact and empathy. While they're on the Burg.com page, they can subscribe to my Influence and Success Insights. There's some great value-based information I send out, as well as usually a weekly, very short 1-minute video, 1.5-minute video called Influence and Success Insights. They can subscribe to the Burg.com blog if they like, and at the homepage they can also connect with me on social media. And make sure when you're there, you click on the Go Giver Way link to our Go Givers International member community. So lots of fun stuff there. So just come to Burg.com and hang out for a while.
Indeed. I think they're going to do exactly that, because this has been a very interesting and enlightening time. And hopefully for some, at least it has been for me, to get a new perspective on sales and influence and understanding how necessary it is, and that you can still be successful without being manipulative. You don't have to twist arms and all these other things that we sometimes invent for ourselves. My question, last question, what would you like to say in parting to that person who's listening, who's going, man, I'm ready to begin. I'm ready to start that transformation, or that person who's saying, you know what, I've reached a certain level and I'm trying to get to that next spot. Maybe I've got 10 units and I want to get to 20, or I've got 20 and I want to get to 100. What would you say to that person listening right now?
Well, I would say first, keep learning and keep taking action. I always say that the first thing, once you know what your desire is, the first thing is to seek out, find the information. Of course, they utilize your services for that. Apply the information right away, and then stay persistent, because we know that the road to yes is always paved with no's. We all know we get knocked down on our rear ends, but it's a matter of getting back up and believing so much in what we're doing that we become 10 feet tall and bulletproof. And then really, again, remember that when it comes right down to it, it's always about pleasing that other person by providing them the kind of value they need to feel great about wanting to do business with you. Because if they do, they're going to do business with you.
Nice. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been an lovely episode that I hope you will listen to multiple times, because there's so many nuggets. Like I said, we didn't get a chance to cover everything, but what's important is that you now have an opportunity to go deeper. You need to go over to Burg.com, fill out the forms, get the book, so that you can take your investing to that next level, take your personal development to that next level. And dare I say, I think if you actually move at the speed of instruction, you'll be able to use and assimilate and internalize Bob's information in such a way that you'll become that better person, that better husband, that better father, that better spouse, that better friend, as well as the better business person. I am so glad and appreciative of you investing your time here, sir, that you do so willingly, and you have so much to share. Thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you. It was a great honor. Thanks for having me on your show.
We look forward to having you again soon. And everyone listening, remember, now is your time to go out there and make something happen. As you've heard me say it before, and I will say it again, once you get started, stay started, and make sure that you go out there and get some cash flow. I will talk to you all soon. Until next time.
Thank you for investing your time with Jay Massey and the Cash Flow Diary. When you have a moment, please visit iTunes and leave a positive comment about the show. And go now to our website, CashFlowDiary.com, to take advantage of our free business building course, Cash Flow Foundation. Gain the knowledge, understanding, and skill that will teach you how to never need a job again. Until next time.